Here's going to be a video for the Tripowin XBGGAR Mele. Let's just call it Mele. Before I continue, I'd like to say thank you. I'm just a dude with a YouTube channel that had a dream of improving on the Belon03 and delivering it to the same group of people in the same price range. That's what I've wanted to do for a couple of years, and I finally got to do it. I can't do that by myself. People have to do the work. They got to put the drivers into the shells. They polish the caps, the work. To everybody that helped with this, thank you. I mean that. Thank you very much. Before I continue, got to say that. And now I will continue. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the bass for the Mele. Remember, this set is, the target originally was to improve upon the Belon03, and I can say for sure that was done with no doubt, absolutely no doubt. This is actually competing with stuff that is of a higher range. The closest analog, most like this set that I have in my possession, is the Tantschim HANA 2021, and this will take us to the graph. This is the graph of the Tripowin. I got to rename it. I kind of hit it, and I do that all the time with sets that are samples and stuff. I give it different names. If you might look on this and say, I've never heard of that, might be because it's a demo sample that's not ready for market yet. This is based on lots of experience, and it's particular to my library, which is classic rock dominated, hip hop, R&B, reggae, music that you've been watching in my videos is really what this is based on. I did listen to some Vivaldi, some Tchaikovsky, Verdi, the Italian composers, and the Russian, listening to strings and the harmonics and the resonance, the authenticity of how it sounds, as I do with guitars and other instruments. Let's start with the bass, though. One of the things about the Belon03 that was very appealing to a lot of people was its tonality was great. Its timbre seemed to be very good as well, and it also had a almost perfect sense of note weight, like authentic note weight. Note weight might not be something that you can quite get your mind around, but the opposite would be easy, and that would be light note weight, which would come off as kind of thin sounding vocals, slightly thin, lacking in depth just a little bit. Drum kits can replay the same, really virtually everything, but vocals in particular can suffer from a lack of note weight. And the Belon03 did the opposite, a little bit too much for some people, and that would be related directly to the mid bass. And I tried a lot of different tunings, and I realized that it wasn't so much if I pull in the mid bass too much, I reduce the note weight. If I extend the upper treble too much, it actually impacts the perception of note weight as well. It's very weird how tuning a one dynamic. It's much harder. What Sony or Sennheiser did with the IE900 is actually quite impressive. Having now tried so many different types, I got to say that they did an outstanding job, though I can find that set to be fatiguing after a while. This will not be fatiguing, and that's got to do with this cut. This is completely intentional. But the bass on the Belon would be probably one place where in its audio replay, people would say it encroaches into the mids or it sounds slow. Now we know 55 hertz is 55 extension, retractions, and return to a stationary position. One of those equals a hertz. It's 3 movements. 55 of those in a second is 55 hertz. We know that that's what that is, but it can to the ear sound slower than it actually is because of the quality of the driver, because of material in the driver, because the material that surrounds the driver, because it's in a cheap plastic. A lot of things can affect that. The Belon was in a metal Cursite shell, I think. That wasn't the problem. It might have been down to the driver. It sounded a little bit slow. It had great tonality, had great note weight. The timbre sounded good, but when you listen to certain things like Black Sabbath Sweetleaf, and this part right here in particular, he's playing drums. A lot of this is in a low frequency. He is playing a bass guitar very fast. These pulls and releases that I'm showing you right here, I'm going to pause it. When you listen to the Belon03, you can hear this very well. You can hear the pulls that he's doing with his fingers. The resonant and the release of the strings are very fast, and they can kind of blur together. It's a pleasing overall replay, but it's not technically excellent. It's not even technically really good. It's its weak point, the Belon03. And I focused on this a lot when trying to tune what I would think would be the improvement on the Belon 03, and I can say that this set right here does this right here better than the Belon without a shadow of a doubt. It also does this better than the Hana 2021 does, even though they are very similar. Let me take a look at the upper mids all the way to the sub bass when I lay this over. They are very, very close to identical. In tonality, they are quite similar. Lots of people talk about after 8 kilohertz should be taken with a grain of salt because measuring resonant peaks. I would agree, because the ability to discern between the Tanschim Hana 2021 and this $49 set is actually quite difficult. And by looking at 8K and beyond, I would think that cymbals and upper harmonic, maybe I can catch it there. I actually couldn't. So when you see peaks like this, their position should be really roughly around 8K. There is energy here. There is energy here. If you check lossless files with a spectrogram, you'll find that there's not really a lot going on up there. There's not a lot of sets that really, unless you're using an EST, have great... Let me give you an example. This is the Elysian Acoustic X. Somebody sent me a mail today asking me if I would trade this with them for something else, and I'll say right now, sorry bro, no. You see this rounded top right here? This is extension. That is not a resonance peak right there. That is legit energy and amplitude given to between 13 and 19 kilohertz on the Elysian X via 4 EST drivers. I'm working with a single dynamic driver. I'm unable to do that. I'm not comparing this in any way, but when you look at those peaks after 8K, trust previous to that and a little bit less there. But let's go ahead and get back to the bass. The replay of the Mele for bass guitar is exceptional. It's very, very good. Listening to Big Boy Kill Jill, the force of the drop, which occurs between 32 and 45 seconds of Kill Jill by Big Boy featuring Killer Mike and Jeezy. Let me go ahead and put this back up here. If we look at the sub bass and mid bass, my set has a little bit more sub bass. When you see a variation of about a dB, insertion depth, it could be that close. These are essentially the same. It's got the same gap running all the way down. I figured that it would be pretty close to the same. The force of the hit on this driver is notably more impactful than on the Hana. And I say this for a couple reasons. One, because it's true and it's part of how I evaluate the set. Second is because I'm a reviewer and I tune the set. There's going to be other reviewers that review the set and they're going to use their library. I'd like to ask them, just for an experiment, because it's rarely been done, if ever, in this hobby, I'm going to name 3 tracks that I'd like you to add, if you could, please, for the public, because I'm saying that I think that the Tripowin that I tuned sounds like it's got more force than the Hana. At 77 dB listening, you can do it actually whatever you want to. The hit that is between 32 and 45 seconds, listen to that hit. It sounds like it's got more power on this set than it does on the Hana. And please listen to Black Sabbath Sweetleaf between 2-minute 36 and 3-minute 10 seconds. That's where this is going on. The YouTube timing is a little bit different, but he is really getting busy. And that again is 236 to 310. The quality and the ability for you to discern the pulls and the releases and the separation between each one, though they're fast and they're low frequency events, I can catch every one clearer than I can on the Hana, which I consider to be a great set. At one point while A and Bing with this set and with the Hana, as you can see, this keyboard is elevated because I don't use this except for when I do reviews and I listen to music. And I got a wrist problem from training, hitting people, hitting bags. So I lift this up because using those wrist pads doesn't work for me. So the set that I'm not listening to falls behind this keyboard. I can't see it. At one point I'm listening to what I thought was the Hana and I thought, oh, that actually sounds a little bit better. I wrote that on a, I think, Hi-Fi Guide's post. I said, A and B, and then I thought, okay, there, it's more expensive. It can't be helped. I'm not competing in this price range. And then I pulled it out and I had the Mele in my ear when I thought I had the Hana, just because of confusion through A and B, which I would have figured out anyway, because when you pull it out of here and you look at it. But I actually had convinced myself that I was listening to the better set. The better set costs more. I was confused because I was actually listening to the set that I tuned myself. It doesn't indicate it in the frequency graph, but it actually does in the replay. So this is actually one of them. I think the bass for when the levee breaks, I think the chain, the bass guitar, I think Massive Attack, Angel, I think Pink Floyd, One of These Days, which is actually Roger Waters and David Gilmour both playing bass guitar, and David Gilmour is actually a more talented bassist than Roger Waters. I think a lot of Pink Floyd fans probably would agree to that. Gilmour is just a better musician. Waters is a better writer. I think that's probably the way that that goes. And you listen to it, you can kind of hear it, and Waters knew that too. That sounds excellent. Low frequency instruments sound fantastic on this. It does it very nice. Vocals actually sound well too, but I'll go ahead and stop bass and go ahead and get into mids. So that's bass. It does it like a champ. There's nothing in its price range that compares to it. I don't know of any. Actually, it's overshot what I was expecting it to be. And I'll explain that at the end of the video. That's the bass. Okay, let's talk about the mids. Mids are important, especially for a library like mine, because vocals, the fundamental portion of vocals for male and females, you see her. Let me sleep on it, baby, baby, let me sleep on it. These two are going at it through this whole track, which is called Paradise by the Dashboard Light by Meatloaf from the Bat Outta Hell album, and it is absolutely epic. And also it's displaying and highlighting a male and female vocals that are talk singing. They're literally talking. They're almost in operatic tones in the portions of this replay. There's lots of changing in the tempo of this track. It's a lot like a opera show if you ever watch this. It's a great evaluation for male and female vocals that are going in to extremes. I can listen to Fleetwood Mac, and I can listen to Stevie Nicks and Christy McVie and Lindsey Buckingham and Mick Fleetwood, and I can hear them, and they're much more produced, and I can hear it to my ear. They're much more in control. There's portions like and there you go again, you say you want your freedom, that harmonic soft spot that kind of gets to me from Stevie Nicks. Those are, otherwise it's a very well mastered album. This is much more of a nuts over the top vocal presentation right here, and the divot that's put in the upper mids to the treble is very much necessary to make this authentic, and also so that you can listen to it for an extended period of time. Listening to a library like mine that has stuff like Blind Faith and Black Sabbath and Blondie and Bob Marley and Boston and Cheap Trick and the Doobie Brothers, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Dire Straits. Mid-bass position on this was great actually as well, but I already did bass. But the mids on this sounded excellent throughout my library, and that's got a lot of impact because the guitar and male and female vocals, the crossover from fundamental to harmonics are very, very similar. Proven by the fact that a lot of times when you listen to a set that doesn't seem to be doing vocals well, it usually doesn't do guitar well either. They almost go hand in hand. If one isn't working out, the other probably isn't as well. If you have a set that does vocals well, unless there's some very strange anomaly in treble, it's probably going to do guitars well also. Like the Tripowin by Aurelius, they did a cut up in the treble. I thought that was a very vocal-centric set. I can get why people love it. I think it's expensive, but I can get watches are expensive. That's money's not the point. But that pleasant replay of vocals has a lot to do with a slight de-emphasis in that area. It's true. It got played out in many demos and samples that I did for my own set, wanting to have a smoother trajectory going off of the scale, my ideal image. It didn't turn out to be what actually sounded best. What I ended up doing is what actually sounded best for my library. So guitars, piano, Elton John, parts of the drums, everything sounded better on this set than it did on the B-Lawn. And with the Hana, which is I think $170, it's difficult to tell. That's not where I was saying, oh, one's better than the other and being confused which one I had in my ear. That was actually other events. That was the force of the impact. That was the quality of the bass pulls and releases. Didn't really play out in vocals so much. But that's a good thing because this set cost $49. So that's the mids. It doesn't stumble, doesn't have any problems. So there's nothing to report. The comparisons probably would be more practical to talk about. How does it? This has better mids than the B-Lon because the weakness of the B-Lon is the mid bass, and the mid bass is directly related to the quality of the mids because that's going to create a slight haze, fuzz, could be perceived as a slight distortion. This is a cleaner replay than the B-Lon, but authentic with great tonality and timbre. So the mids are great, and that's the mids. Okay, lastly, we got the treble. The treble is very important because it's doing a lot of the final polishing of a lot of the stuff that I listen to. It is where the harmonics of vocals actually sound unnaturally, like it got a sheen to them, like Stevie Nicks in the part I was talking about, of Dreams, at the very beginning when she's singing the first verse. That sounds offensive instantly, and I know that that's going to be a problem because of that, and that has been isolated by me using a spectrogram, a great tool to use, by the way. And that spot is right in that area. So why people de-emphasize that slightly, I can get it because I ended up doing it myself. And again, that's this region right here. It was done to some extent by the Tanzjamhana. It's done by a lot of sets, actually. They sometimes do it a little bit earlier. My set in particular is starting at around 5.5 and going to 9 with de-emphasis that doesn't descend below the mids. So they're absolutely identical. The lowest point of the mids is the same lowest point right here. And the treble is where cymbal strikes get their sense of being abruptly cut and sound like a tss, or they sound like they are too energetic and they've got a like a splash instead of a crash, or they sound unnatural and it's to your ear, what you're familiar with listening to. It's all about the tracks that you're people recommend music all the time and say, could you try this and listen to that? If I haven't listened to something 1,000 times, it's almost worthless. You got to think about that. When I'm listening for things in the music, I'm listening for a familiarity and comfort. And when something is other than that is when it sticks out in my brain. When a cymbal strike on Led Zeppelin, Hey, Hey, What Can I Do? Let's go ahead and check that out. CFG, Led Zeppelin. Hey, hey, what can I do? I got a woman, she won't be true. Oh, hear what I say. I got a woman on a bar all day. The cymbal strikes on the 7, 13, 16, 28, 37, 41, 47, 53, 59, and on are perfect. There's no sense of abruptness, shortness of life. There is no sense that I missed a little of the beginning and I'm catching the tail. Cymbals are unique instruments because they're meant to stand out. When they're struck, they're supposed to be noticeable and stepping out. It's like when a guitarist hits a certain distortion pedal, for example, actually Fool in the Rain by Led Zeppelin, and he hits the pedal at 351 for Fool in the Rain, if you want to go ahead and listen to that. That's an awesome track, by the way. Jimmy Page. There are moments when they're trying to get in your face, and there's times when they're trying to stand back, and your ear notices when something doesn't sound right. Like the bassist is more forward than he's supposed to be. When the cymbals sound like they're slightly back, but you know that that's not the way it's supposed to be. Your ears pick up on that. That's why when you're a reviewer, you usually use the library that you're most familiar with, because your authority in that sense is just as a music lover. You know what that sounds like, you know what appeals to you, and anything other than that sounds off. And then you try to dig in and find out exactly what that is. The cymbal strikes on this set sound excellent. The upper harmonics on vocals, including Stevie Nicks and everybody that you can see in my library, Robert Plant, Robert Palmer, Steven Tyler, Chris Cornell, they all sound excellent. That little divot that you see in the treble is something you should keep your eye on. If you end up buying Mele and you like the way that it replays vocals, keep in your mind that little de-emphasis that companies put in that region, because it's not an artifact or relic or some symptom of inability to tune that region. It's done with intention, and I understand why it's done now. because I played with trying to get more energy after 10K, realized that it's giving me less note weight. Even if I don't change the mid bass, that's the perception. Perception is reality. I have no idea what the correlation between more extension on a single dynamic driver. Remember, this isn't a hybrid or a tribrid. ESTs are a wonderful tool to have. They would have been awesome to use in this set, but I didn't get to use them, and to do that in this price range would be impossible. And the goal of this was actually to mimic the Belon and polish it, and I did that actually with Spades. So the treble on this is great. It does guitar solos like Jimmy Page's Fool in the Rain, again at 3 minutes 51 all the way to 4 minutes 53 seconds. Keep these in mind and ask for me. I got a Google sheet with these timestamps in particular. I really don't want to be vague with you. There's no heights, there's no depths, there's no vagueness to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about music and specific moments in them that you can go check yourself and say, I don't hear that, or I see what he's talking about, but I don't find that to be important. Take out the variables, and then all we have left is the music, and then it's up to preference and how I expect stuff and how you expect stuff. What I consider to be normal, that's the thing about looking at a graph and saying it's objective. It is to look at it. Then when you interpret it, you're being subjective, because your ideal replay of violins might not be what someone else says, because they might say, that doesn't sound lifelike to me, and then you're having this debate about what that should sound like when replayed by different types of transducers. So once you take and you start to interpret a graph, you're being subjective. The graph is an objective object. The interpretation of it is a subjective exercise, and it comes down to your library. So being specific is important to me. And that's the treble. I think it's excellent. I don't think anything touches this in its price range. And you think, that's really convenient, bro, because it's your set. Exactly. I tuned this. This wasn't sent to me like, what do you think? Put your name on it. This took a long freaking time. I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to go ahead and address that for the people that care. Do I wreck it at its price range? Are you fucking kidding me? Buy it now. Yes, of course I do. And that's it. That's the treble. Okay, this is extras, I guess you can call it. You can leave if you want. I recommend that you buy it. Of course I do. For its price, I think it's excellent. Punch says, how far do you have to go before I can hear a dynamic driver that sounds clearly better than this? That's a good question, right? What price point do you need to get to until you get to another dynamic driver? Let's say you're a dynamic driver lover, and that would be something I'd say, yeah, I got nothing for you. That's a better set. Tance Gym O2, the Oxygen. That is a set, when I get a good fit because it's got a shallow stem, that is a brilliantly tuned set. The O2 is brilliant, and I love it. I've always have. The only weakness has always been the fit for me, and that's kind of a pattern with that company. I have no idea why. That set is a better dynamic driver than this set. But it's going to cost you $300, $280, $300. When you go below that, I can't think of a set that I could say, oh, that's clearly better. You can throw around all your stuff, and you might be a fan of a certain company, and that's all fine and good. But technically speaking, replays on what I showed you in the videos, the vocals in Paradise by the Dashboard Light, the pulls and releases of the bass guitar on Black Sabbath Sweetleaf, I find this to be punching well above its price range. And I'll explain to you why that maybe happened. The idea to put this together, and why is this in a shell that looks... This is something that goes with a much more expensive set, and these caps are done by Peacock. I'll explain to you a secret that is not going to be a secret anymore. Miscommunication between me and Linsol when I said I wanted to do a set, and I said, based on what another reviewer did and the collaboration that they did, it looks like he was doing about 10% of a set that he helped retune. It looks like that to me. I think he addressed that publicly as well. So I'm not going to name or say anything, but I think that there's nothing private to this. I think it was either in a live stream or it was typed up, or he was very open about like his income for the year, how much is related to Patreon, all that. Very, very open. So I believe it was 10%, and I voiced that sounded like it was fairly reasonable. And they thought, okay. And the tuning was done with another set for a while, a different shell, and then it was finally brought over to this one. I thought, wow, this is really nice. I didn't really inquire to it, but I thought, this looks really familiar. And, what do you think? And, oh, that's an awesome shell. I love it very much. It's got a nice lip. It's very high quality. Again, it goes with the Sinfonio VR1, which was like $2,000. Was it worth $2,000? No. But it was an expensive set, and when people looked at it, they thought, that looks absolutely beautiful, and it fits great, and it's... So they sourced a great set of shells, because they were available. And then the next thing was the caps on it. And I was thinking put my logo on the caps. That was my original idea. That's how self-absorbed I am. A lot of people would have been like, yep, man, too much. And their idea was to put a little subtle thing right here, which turned out to be much wiser decision than mine. But then there was like, well, how about Peacock, and do you know them? And yeah, I love the shells on that. I still got 2 of them because I don't want to give them away because they're beautiful. And they showed me samples, and this gold one, the black ones that are available to you, and I thought, get that one. Put this whole thing together, and then one day the topic came to pricing. And I think that the internal, or the idea was to be over $100, because the initial offer was 15 per unit, which would make the units 150 each. And then I said, well, this is supposed to be at the Belon target. This is when this whole thing went weird. I said, this is supposed to be for Belon Army. I wanted to polish the Belon 03, and I wanted to offer it to them. If I do something for $100, $130, $150, I'm overshooting my target. That's not who I was aiming at. And then they said, well, the shell caps and these are more expensive than we expect. There was a miscommunication, and I said, I guess I don't remember what my final comment was, but I do know that for 3 to 4 days, which is unusual, there was no contact back and forth, because a great miscommunication had taken place. I had thought that this was going to be around $50, and they had thought this was going to be more than that, and they went about getting materials in line with that. In that price range, these shells with these caps would still be a good get. Tune it well, it's still a good get, and then put it in better packaging. And this is $50. This really happened. This caused some issue, actually. And for 3 to 4 days, there was nothing. And then there was a reply that came back and said the cable will have to be. And the cable, by the way, is fine. It's a 2-pin .078. It's very nice. Look, there's nothing wrong with it. Said the cable's going to have to be like the one you've got. We can't do any better than that. I said, that's fine. The packaging will be kind of minimal. And I said, my crowd doesn't really care that much. Do you guys really? We're all here for the music and the tuning. So the negotiation back, which was that you're going to have to concede some of the perks of the set, including an upgraded cable, like coming stock balance with because they got cables on their shelves that are higher quality than this that they could add in, but that costs money. We can't do that if we're going to ask this price. I said, fine, 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 and fine. I thought we were all in board that we were going for a polished 03. There's a market right there, and that's the one I'm going after. You know, I saw the nice shells and the nice caps, and I guess I should have said, are we on the same page? But apparently we fell off it. So what you guys are getting is a set that one group of people thought was going to be sold for between $130 and $150, and based on what exists in its range, it would be competitive there easily as well. So there wasn't like weird optimism on that side. They got the nice shells, they got the nice caps, they had everything set, and I was going for a different audience. That's part of the reason I haven't done a video in 8 days. That's part of the reason this took longer, because what was imagined to be done and what I wanted to do was 2 different things. I ended up getting what I wanted. Everything's the same, the tuning, the driver, nothing changed, but the cable won't be top of the line. It'll be the one that's right in front of you, which actually you can look at in the video. It's fine. It's better than what comes in a lot of stuff that's in its price range. There's nothing wrong with it. The cable's fine. But in their mind, they're thinking this is going to be your signature set, so we're going to go all out. And I don't. My army was built in the budget realm, so I thought we knew that the whole time. Miscommunication. It happens. But this is a set that's $49.99, and people were going to sell it for 3 times that much. And I would have gone with that if it wasn't for the fact that the original idea was that this was for Belon Army. And this isn't shading anybody. I'm trying to explain to you guys that some people said, oh, for that price, that looks great. It's kind of because some stuff went a little sideways. But it turned out well, and I'm going to make $5 for every set that's sold when they thought I was going to get $15 for every set that's sold, which would have been a $150 set. Because their thinking, I think, is like $5, and like if you sell 100 is five. Like, that's not a big deal, dude. And people forget sometimes, I don't do this hobby because of making money. Patreons know that, actually, because of the amount of the award main items with Z1R will be again. But people that watch casually maybe don't, and even the people that deal with me sometimes don't really get it, that this isn't about money for me. This is about music, sharing the joy of music, and this set was targeted for the group that follows me. And trust me, that's who this was aimed for. If I don't make any more money, or if I don't really care about that. So you guys know now, each set that sells off of this is $5. To them, it sounds like a ridiculous, why did we even get into this? There's got to be business. I'm not going to say, oh, just sell it for free. $5, 50, 10%. Keep it that way instead of 15 out of 150. It'll probably turn out better. There's no guarantee about that, but the reason that this is in a nice shell with nice caps is because the target was different on that side. I appreciate it, and it turned out well for me and for you, but this was a result of a little bit of miscommunication. I'm so thankful to Linsol because I was difficult to deal with a lot of times. I don't wreck some of the stuff like the PD1, which is their baby, and they were going to release it. The T5, these are important things, and I get them first, and I don't even do videos for them. It's not team play. And I don't get dinged for it like I do by other companies, and you guys know the names of those companies because you don't see me reviewing their stuff. I get treated better because I was there before Linsol was even named Linsol, and it was just DD Audio on AliExpress. So there's been a fairness to me from that side that's been great, without any expectation of anything other than if I love something, I say it and do a video. And if I don't, at best, I might just move along and hope that someone else maybe can appreciate the specialness in what they made, because I can't. And I'm not going to sit on a video and bash on something unless it's obnoxiously poor. And there was a set recently that was like that, but some people loved it. It was made by a rival, Penon. I didn't do a video because raining on other people's happiness is shitty. And I'm not into that. I don't want to do videos for that. For anybody. For a rival. For anybody. Nothing. I did the FIO video because it seemed they were going the wrong way. But I prefer not to do videos like that if I can. $50. I think it's a deal. Grab it. Grab it now. Grab it now. I hope you already did, actually. Thank you for listening. And comparisons will be coming in the future. Not right away. I'm backed up because I took so long. But that's it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you to everybody that's involved with this. Thank you very much. Appreciations. And I'm out.